Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Of the videos that I produce for YouTube, the stuff on nutrition probably gets less views than content related to barefoot running, sandal running, minimalist shoes, ultra running, and mindset. But it's perhaps the most important thing, probably the biggest, most important change that I made. Things kind of started with cancer in late '04, back when I was 42 years old, and it was not until December 10th of 2010 that I completely committed to going on a 100% plant-based diet. And upon finally doing that, after consulting with Dr. Ruth Heydrich out in Hawaii for a week to 10 days, kind of picking her brain, I can tell you that quickly after that change, I started seeing the improvements quickly. Within about 2 months, I decided to stop taking my cholesterol medication. I'd been trying to get off my cholesterol meds since for quite a few years. Had been on them since I believe my late 20s, and failed over and over at that attempt until I went on a 100% plant-based diet. So about 3 months after the change, I had a blood test that confirmed that my cholesterol had come way down without taking the medication. So that was a big deal. But around that same time, I had already been into barefoot and minimalist running. I was running in thin zero sandals and cross-country flats and so forth, running quite a bit pure barefoot. And once I changed my diet, kind of the combination of lots of running, losing some weight, and changing my nutrition, I started noticing I wasn't using my bifocals as much. So my vision actually improved and has stayed better all these years. It happened fairly quickly, and my eye doctor was pretty surprised. I don't think I've made any progress trying to convince her she too should change her diet, but the results for me personally were phenomenal. The unintended positive consequences were kind of overwhelming. I wanted to shout from the rooftops to everybody, and of course I now know that talking to people about radical changes to their nutrition is much like trying to persuade them to change political parties or religions. It's not easy, and it goes against basically generations of people that have sort of been brainwashed to believe in things that are not true relative to nutrition. Nevertheless, I keep trying. Even though it's an uphill climb, I figure if I can reach one person by sitting and chatting with this camera for a while, it's more than worth it. So after having gone through years of fear after having had cancer when my 3 daughters, when our girls were basically 6, 4, and 2, I was pretty spooked. Concerned that, once you've had cancer at 42, you're at pretty good risk of it coming back in some form. And so I dove into a lot of research on the topic. And one of the early things that caught my attention was learning kind of how and why people in Canada had higher skin cancer rates than people near the equator. And my theory on that is that it's kind of a cultural thing relative to nutrition and the location of where more plant-based foods are more readily available year-round. So obviously near the equator, fruits and vegetables are grown year-round. They're affordable. In terms of culture and so forth, the recipes handed down for generations near the equator are probably way more likely to include a higher percentage of plant-based food sources. It's just logical. And when you get further and further away from the equator, say Canada, for generations of people living through extra long winters, it just wasn't as common to have plant-based foods year-round. So, the recipes that are passed down from generation to generation, virtually everything includes a significant amount of animal-based foods. So anyhow, as I realized that I was really moving mentally from a phase based on fear of cancer coming back to a very optimistic and hopeful phase that making a major diet change, going on a 100% plant-based diet, would very significantly reduce my risk going forward. So now I don't even tend to think about that part of my life very often. I've run well over 100 ultramarathons, including 32 official 100-mile finishes. So I'm thinking about my next trip, my next adventure, my next race, my next training. And it's a much more positive focus. I basically have found that my mood has improved. Research that was featured in Dr. Garth Davis's book, Proteinaholic, showed that there was a very high correlation between a diet high in animal-based proteins versus plant-based proteins, a very high correlation to suicidal depression amongst those that consumed a lot of animal-based foods. So that's a pretty controversial area to wade into, kind of the mental health side of it. The physical health side of it is a little easier to build a case for in terms of plant-based diets are well known to be very effective at lowering not only cholesterol but plaque in the veins that leads to strokes and heart attacks. People can reverse what was considered fatal heart disease simply by changing the diet to an all plant-based diet, preferably whole food plant-based. Now I can say that I'm going on 15 years this December, 100% plant-based. I don't think I've even once had constipation during those 15 years. So, I'm still working on improving the quality of my diet, and there's still room to improve gut biome and keep my weight a little bit lower yet and so forth. But it's been being on the all plant-based diet has made it way, way easier to manage my body weight at what I consider to be the ideal for just feeling good in general and in terms of athletic performance as well. Significantly reducing my risk for virtually all chronic diseases, especially cancer and heart disease. Personal health reasons were kind of initially what got me into a vegan diet. However, I've watched so many documentaries, read a great number of books on the topic, and of course, as you dive deeper into it and get better at living on 100% plant-based foods, you're also realizing what a huge benefit it is to the environment. So by consuming only plant-based foods, especially if they happen to be more locally produced, there's a huge reduction in environmental damage. Raising animal-based foods tends to use a lot of water. Generally, a lot of plant-based crops have to be grown to feed the animals. And just that entire cycle is extraordinarily wasteful. So bottom line is, I mean, there are plenty of documentaries on this topic, but the bottom line is the damage we do to the soil, the water, and the air is incredibly significant. And basically the kind of the cycle of stupidity we're on in terms of destroying the environment just to produce animals that we consume that then make us sick, and then we take pills to offset the preventable side effects, and then we release those toxins from our body into the toilet, and it goes right back into the environment. It's just an absolute cycle of stupidity, insanity, and we generally just think it's normal. And it's really not. We should be. If we were to politically, economically, if we were to incentivize the production of organic plant-based foods, or just plant-based foods in general, and not incentivize the production of animal-based foods, we would fairly quickly see a reduction in the amount of chronic disease amongst our population. We would see a direct course to a cleaner environment, and we'd see a great reduction in our costs for healthcare. Being on a completely plant-based diet is, it seems to me it should be the ideal for anyone who considers themselves to be an environmentalist. I know I feel a whole lot better about the impact of my habits on the planet, and my health care expenses have just become very, very minimal. In terms of athletics and going out and routinely running 100-mile races, relative to endurance athletics, probably one of the biggest risks is oxidative stress and inflammation. So obviously a completely plant-based diet, especially if it's all or mostly whole foods, that is going to be your most anti-inflammatory diet, and it's going to fight oxidative stress better than anything else. Animal sourced foods have absolutely zero fiber, and the type of fat that's in there is generally not what you want to be taking in. Plant-based fats and non-heme plant-based iron, that's what we thrive on the best. Our bodies, pretty much everything about our bodies hints at us being more related to herbivores than carnivores. An interesting example of that is our vision, full color vision. True carnivores, say hawks and tigers, they see in black and white. We obviously see in color, theoretically, so that we can spot fresh, ripe berries and so forth, fruit out in the wild. So for foraging, being able to see colors is important. If we were truly carnivores, we would, gray tones for hunting animals would be the best option. Clearly, our teeth are designed for chewing up plant-based food. We don't have talons and giant sharp teeth. We have an extra long digestive tract, which happens to be ideal for pulling all of the amino acids out of our protein to sustain us. So what I've learned firsthand is, without a doubt, not only is an all plant-based diet adequate, but it's vastly superior. And that would be on every level. Haven't even gotten into animal rights and how poorly we treat our fellow creatures. Factory farming is just a heinous thing. The cruelty we inflict on these animals, it's just heartbreaking. Anybody that really believes that they're a carnivore should watch the documentary Earthlings in its entirety, which I have done. That alone might change your mind, even if you don't care about your personal well-being. Coming at it from that angle is important. I think a lot of people have become plant-based or vegan as a result of just the animal rights side of it alone. I don't want to downplay that. It's an important part of being human. People would often say, well, I can just go vegetarian and that way I'm not eating meat. They're not destroying animals on my behalf, which is true. Being vegetarian or more plant-based is way better than consuming lots of animal-sourced foods. But what I would tell people is that in terms of our well-being, consuming any kind of dairy products or eggs, those things are effectively liquid meat. And so I just kind of lump them all together. Animal-sourced foods, I mean, you couldn't pay me to eat that stuff. I guess starvation would be the exception. That is a brilliant part of our design, is that in the event that there are no plant-sourced foods available, we can survive on animal-based foods. So it's been an important part of our history as a species, but since many decades ago, affordable transport and refrigeration were invented. And ever since that time, we really don't need to consume any animal-based foods. There are so many different angles on this, so much peer-reviewed science, so many anecdotal reports. For example, telomeres. People who have been thriving on a plant-based diet have longer telomeres. Longer telomeres are obviously correlated to a longer lifespan. Not that a longer lifespan is the end-all, be-all, but I'm 62, and by age 62, 63, most people my age are already limited in what they can do. They're kind of probably taking several different medications, and they can't do a lot of the things that they'd like to do. And so it's about lifespan. However many years we're given, really being able to be active and enjoying and living those years. Lifespan is just as important as longevity. So I'm greedy, I guess. I'd like to have both, a longer life and more life in those years. And the only thing I can't be 100% sure what I'm doing is going to continue working. But if I'm a betting man playing the odds, I know what I need to do to improve my odds. If you've never seen the documentary Forks Over Knives, check that one out. It's a classic. It's convinced a lot of people to change their diet lifestyles. And they take people who are on lots of medications, and one example is a man who has diabetes, and they show during the documentary how switching over to a whole foods plant-based diet can stop and reverse diabetes. It's not about the sugar necessarily. Now, sugar is a whole nother topic. I'm not advocating that you consume processed sugar, but I do not limit how much fruit I consume. Whole fruit, in my opinion, by most plant-based people's opinions, as perfectly healthy. However, processed sugar can be a problem. I don't think it's as big of a problem as a lot of the keto and paleo people and carnivore people say it is, but I do try to limit processed sugar. The bottom line is there also seems to be a very strong correlation between people who are on all plant-based diets having lower incidences of autoimmune disease. There are many autoimmune diseases, and one of the theories that makes a lot of sense is that people who consume a lot of animal-sourced foods tend to have more constipation and a less healthy gut biome. And that inflammation in the gut, that backed up gut where the food's not passing through quick enough, that leads to more of something called leaky gut syndrome. And we know that food cells from plant-based foods and animal-based foods leak through the thin lining of our gut and into the bloodstream. One of the credible theories is that over time, as the animal-based foods get into our bloodstream and our autoimmune system flushes that stuff out, the system can sort of malfunction. And instead of pulling, say, red meat cells out of our bloodstream, our body starts to attack itself. That type of disease is harder to stop or heal from. So, some of those autoimmune diseases are absolutely horrific. If you're not afraid of cancer, if you're not afraid of heart disease, if you're not afraid of MS or ALS, maybe you're concerned about Parkinson's or any of the dementias. Most of the dementias have one thing in common, and that is vascular dementia. Basically, as the veins and arteries get plugged up with plaque and the blood and oxygen are not flowing through the blood vessels as much as they used to, that leads to vascular dementia. Although most people that have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever type of maybe Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia is virtually always a part of that. So it gets complicated, but people who are on a long-term, all plant-based diet should have a far lower risk for any of the dementias. Parkinson's is an interesting one because it seems to be related to the toxins that accumulate in the animals, the meat of the animals that people eat. So those same toxins are in they're much less concentrated in plant-based foods. So a diet high in animal-based foods is believed to be part of what is the cause of Parkinson's disease. And generally, people who are consuming a very high percentage of their nutrition from animal-sourced foods are going to have higher cholesterol levels, more plaque in the arteries. They're more likely to have vascular dementia. And if you've ever seen people fading away from dementia, it's just absolutely awful. If nothing else, not wanting your family to see you go through dementia might be enough to convince you to change your nutrition, because it really should significantly reduce your risk of suffering from dementia. Simply going to a whole food, delicious, all plant-based diet. Of course, changing your diet is not the only variable. Quitting or cutting back on alcohol is obviously important. Not smoking is obviously important. Getting some exercise and being a social creature connected to others, those are all very important as well. My opinion is that if you are feeling better because you're on an all plant-based diet and you're not constipated, you're not sickly, you're going to want to move. You're going to be feeling better. You're going to want to get out and get some sort of exercise, even if it's simply in the form of play. So basically, no matter what your situation is now, there is good potential that you can create an upward spiral in your well-being, and everybody around you will benefit, as will our entire ecosystem, the Earth.